Have you ever owned or just driven a serious POS car? I'm fairly certain we all have at one time or another. Today is going to be a combo top 5 worst cars with a weird thing about each on today's 5 weird things. Welcome to the channel. Everybody likes weird trivia and I am no different. Sometimes the weird is just my own perspective and everybody disagrees. So, what's your worst car you've ever had? Let me know in the comments. Now with that out of the way, here's the stuff we kind of all know. Webster's dictionary defines the word worst as of the lowest quality or the most unpleasant, difficult, or severe. Now while the term worst can be overly picky and more than a little judgy, you're in luck. I am overly picky and I'm more than a little judgy for all of us. Extensive Googling and ChatGPTing and my own rotten car experience have given me a list of cars that were poorly made, unlucky, or sold poorly, or a solid mix of all three. So let's get into the judging here. Weird thing number 5, the Yugo GV. Produced by a company called Zastava in Yugoslavia, the Yugo gained a reputation for poor build quality, poor material quality, reliability issues, horrible gas mileage, and subpar performance. Now, my father was a professional mechanic for over half a century, and he said he never saw one with its hood down or running. The car was imported to the US to be the cheapest car in the US, and it was, in more ways than one. If you look for a used Yugo GV for sale, you're going to have to look really hard online because I couldn't find one. Weird thing number 4, the AMC Gremlin. The Gremlin was criticized for its unusual design and handling issues, contributing to a perception of poor quality. Now, the car was released on April 1st, 1970, like some sort of engineering April Fool's joke. Despite its comical reputation, AMC sold 671,475 Gremlins during its production, making it one of the best-selling AMCs ever built. Now, I went to high school with someone whose father got a brand new Gremlin from the dealership, and after several years of it continually breaking down, gave it to her. She was always asking for a ride because the car rarely ran, and it was ugly. Weird thing number 3, the Pontiac Aztek. Other than being the car that school teacher Walter White drove in Breaking Bad and later sold for $50 without a care, the Pontiac Aztek was a reliable, solid performing car if you could get past its unsavory looks. At least several of the reviewers that I looked into said this. Now that might just be an issue with the period, its looks, because it was one of the earlier crossover vehicles and looks much closer to mainstream now. However, back then, regarded as one of the ugliest cars ever made. A very negative reviewer that I found wrote, despite being touted as an off-road vehicle, the wheels were made smaller and the car could definitely not go off-road. In that period between concept and production, costs were cut anywhere and everywhere that they could be, which resulted in a fairly useless, underpowered, and ugly monstrosity of a car. After just 5 months of production, the Aztek was redesigned. Weird thing number 2, the Chevy Vega. To quote Car and Driver, the Chevrolet Vega is remembered as one of General Motors' worst cars, a troublesome rust bucket prone to gas tank fires and melting engines. They go on to even take a swipe at the AMC Gremlin that I already mentioned in the same article. And a sad thing was, they built the car with some of the newest processes and technologies, but due to some internal management and engineering issues, the car was ultimately not what they'd envisioned. Despite an initial good reception by the press, car's flaws began to mount. Basically, it was made by people that didn't want to make it and didn't believe in it. And finally, weird thing number 1, the Chrysler PT Cruiser. Now, the Cruiser has the first spot for a very good reason. It's a wretched car, poorly made and unsupported by its manufacturer, and I had the misfortune of owning several. Now, since the first place was up for grabs among 3 different cars, the deciding factor for the PT Cruiser was my own personal experience. I'll explain why I sold it for parts in just a minute. Now, the car officially was known for oil leaks, transmission leaks, air conditioning leaks, time belt failure, fuel pump issues, and a really interesting fact that once they stopped making the PT Cruiser, they stopped making parts. My driver's side window, the motor broke and with the window down. I went to the dealership for repair. I was told they would have to back order it, so I put in my info and I went to leave. But before I got in my car, Head said, find out the details. I went back in. I said, hey, how many back orders? When was the first back order made? Turns out that there are 356 back orders that began 2 years before. In other words, nobody makes that part anymore, and there are no substitutes. Now, I dealt with all the leaks that I mentioned, avoided the time belt issue, air conditioning quit completely, and finally, a month after I made the back order for the window motor, I went to have it smogged, and I was told, after a long explanation of why, this car would never pass a smog test. I finally sold it to Pick Apart for $300. Well, that's it for today's episode. Now, if you listen this far, you don't have any serious complaints, at least tell me in the comments about the biggest POS you've ever owned. Also, I'm always on the lookout for new video ideas. What do you want to see? Let me know. Take care and have a great day.